Hello, my name is Lisa. I am Australian and not real, however, the sound is real. Please do not be put off by my non-existence. I am better than the original author, who sometimes stutters, and says, so, a lot. This presentation was delivered to the 9th TEAN Annual Education Research Conference on the 11th of May 2018. Secular mindfulness, non-religious Buddhism or Buddhism without the awkward bits has come into our three education sectors. Although acknowledging the source is the Buddhist teachings, it is very different. This study looks at the original scriptures and draws out 5 misconceptions in practice and why they may be harmful to those who undertake them. The presentation will also show how the right understanding of mindfulness can be incorporated into the existing curriculum. As a starter for GCSE physics, biology and level medical physics, and as the main activity for PSHE/citizenship and religious education. Photo by Images George Rex. The background picture is of Vasa, a Swedish warship built between 1626 and 1628. It sank within 20 minutes of its maiden voyage, killing many of those on board. This was Sweden's biggest ever financial disaster. The king wanted the best ever warship. The original designer died and the ship then kept on getting altered. This ship sunk due to the lack of understanding of the theory, a high center of gravity. Similarly, we have this ship of secular mindfulness which will sink those on board sooner or later as it has missed out a large chunk of the theory of mindfulness, the Abhidhamma. The phrase using these methods is under dispute here. Photo by Alan Weller. We read in the original texts that the Buddha's son could have no more mental suffering of any kind after the age of 20. The same with his wife, Princess Yasodhara. Both had developed right mindfulness. Of course we do not know this to be true, however, we can begin to understand why this might be the case by examining the theory of mindfulness to understand the mechanism by which it works. This theory must be right, otherwise the practice will be wrong. Wrong practice will lead in the opposite direction, so mental sufferings will increase. This theory is difficult. It is ambitious to understand it. The first misconception concerns the source of this right understanding. The following 3 are misconceptions of practice, and the last is why these will harm you. 90% of science teacher trainees have a misconception of weight in space. Most will say their weight is very small or zero. Astronauts actually have a lot of weight in space. This is a complex problem involving the dynamics of circular motion. Difficult concepts get dumbed down. We might call this watered-down physics, or McPhysics, or just wrong. It is easier to teach with this misconception rather than understand the truth of the laws of gravity and acceleration. Around 50% of physics specialists also have misconceptions over Newton's third law. Photo by NASA. To understand these misconceptions, we need to go back 300 years in history to Newton's first, second, third laws of motion and his law of gravitation. In 2000 years' time, these laws will still apply. At UEL, I have a list of 200 misconceptions for GCSE 14-16 years old physics. These were derived from a journal paper by Joel Kramer. The first one is that history has no place in science. If our pupils ignore these historical grades, they will have poor physics. History is important for physics. Photo by Aldos. From this quote, we know that 99% plus of Buddhists must have misconceptions. How many misconceptions might there be after 2,500 years? 20,000? If we look at some non-secular and secular practices today, there is very little difference. Secular mindfulness grows out of misconceptions of Buddhism. It grows out of the dumbing down of mindfulness in Buddhism by Buddhists. These 20,000 misconceptions can mostly be eliminated by 4 misconceptions. The 5th misconception here is why they will harm. Photo by Jerome Prax. Mindfulness does not belong to the Buddha in the same way as gravity does not belong to Newton. However, as we have seen, most people have misconceptions about gravity, and it requires someone who understands what Newton understood to correct these. People do not have the ability to figure this out by themselves. In the same way, the theory of mindfulness is deep and difficult and beyond most people to figure it out by themselves. Secular mindfulness has not been created as a result of understanding mindfulness in Buddhism and then removing the awkward bits. It is not the mindfulness the Buddha taught. It is something else. History is important to understand mindfulness. The Tipitaka, the Bible of Buddhism, consists of 3 parts. The Abhidhamma is one of the parts. It consists of 7 books as well as 4 books of commentaries. It is essential for the understanding of how mindfulness works. It is the engine of mindfulness. It is completely absent from secular mindfulness. If you remove the engine from the car, it will not work. Abhidhamma translates as higher reality or higher teaching from the Theravada tradition of Buddhism. This first misconception concerns how Abhidhamma applies to reality. We have 2 questions which can diagnose these misconceptions of reality and wrong practice. The picture is from the Art of Brick exhibition showing a picture of a woman's head. The typical answer of a woman's head is not an accurate description of what we see. Did you describe the writing or what is seen to the left or right of the picture? We are selecting out from what is seen. With just 3 colors, we form the idea of a person from what is seen. Of course there is no person here, just Lego, actually not even Lego. So what is happening? Photo by Isaiah 115. We do not see words. We see different lines/shades. Our mind instantly translates the lines into words. Seeing sees, and this is followed by thinking in words. In the same way, the mind translates the different colors of what is seen into shape and form of something such as a person, as in our picture. There are different types of thinking. Thinking of shape and form is a type of thinking. We perceive a person. However, we cannot see a person. The same process occurs when we see a real person. What is seen is real, however, person, table, whiteboard are ideas read out of reality. They are concepts, the object of thinking. This is not a theory of life, but a life as it is. The reality which is seen is not understood. This is the domain of mindfulness. To study realities as they are, so that they can be understood. Photo by Chu Xing. The engineer exploits this mechanism. I was in orbit with Tim Peake and re-entered the Earth's atmosphere for £6.50. This was using a virtual reality headset at the Science Museum. Better than the actual thing, because unlike Tim Peake I could have a coffee and cookie afterwards. Whereas Tim Peake had to be carried out of his capsule by 10 people. This could be used as a starter in GCSE physics or A-level medical physics. The eye is only sensitive to color. The brain then reads this information to form up the idea of person or chair. Our engineers need to know this if they are to design our virtual reality headsets and our IMAX cinemas. Photo by NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. How many objects can you touch? Only 3 objects can be touched. Typical answers such as a chair, table, a person shows the reality is hidden. We can only touch hardness or softness, hot or cold, motion or pressure. The body is only sensitive to hardness or softness, hot or cold, motion or pressure. We experience a reality and this is immediately followed by thinking. A table is as a concept the object of thinking. Our GCSE biologists need to know this, and so we have a starter for them. The body is sensitive to these 3 objects and from these, nerve signals are sent to the brain via the nervous system. If we take the word heat, this word represents a reality which can be directly experienced through the body sense as hot or cold. We do not have to call it by any name. In science, we understand temperature as the average kinetic energy of the molecules. However, this is thinking about the temperature, not the direct experience of temperature. Photo by Mighty Boy Brian. Science never studies reality directly, only concepts about reality. We are turbocharging science with these almost bland starters as we are turning the mind from concepts about reality to reality itself. Mindfulness studies reality directly. When there is mindfulness, a reality appears clearer than before. In this way, understanding of it will develop. It is essential for the development of mindfulness to know the object of mindfulness, which is a reality. not a concept. This is completely missing from secular mindfulness, or even most non-secular mindfulness as practiced in the West. Any practice involving posture or place is wrong. We are now grouping phenomena into two types: concepts and realities. What hears now and what sees now. There are two types of reality: the mental and the physical. Sound does not experience anything but can be experienced. Hearing consciousness experiences sound. Hearing consciousness does not live anywhere, it does not have any arms and legs, it just experiences sound. It is a mental phenomenon. Anger, attachment, love, intention are mental phenomena. They experience an object. What we take for a person, chair, car, bus, are just different realities which come into existence by a condition and fall away immediately. When you clap your hand, a sound is produced. The sound does not come from anywhere, it does not go anywhere. It arises from a condition and falls away. All realities are like this: they arise from conditions and fall away immediately. They never return again. Anger, sadness, compassion, kindness. All realities which arise by conditions. There is no abiding self or agent who has control over them. They arise once and then they are gone completely, never to return. In the absolute sense, there is no person, no self, just different realities arising and falling away by different conditions. Mindfulness is conditioned to arise. No one can make mindfulness arise. Intention to have it is not a condition for it. Sitting is not a condition. It is the intellectual understanding of this difference between reality and concept which is the condition. Photo by Tricky, Rick Harrison. Any practice involving going to a certain place at a certain time, or selecting an object, or trying is wrong practice. It is the self-trying. Realities work by themselves. Mindfulness begins with detachment from the very beginning. It arises by conditions. Secular mindfulness lacks the condition for mindfulness. Secular mindfulness loses this conditionality of reality and inserts a belief in a self who can make mindfulness arise. It introduces a ritual of doing something at a certain time. It inserts dogma where there was no dogma. The precise understanding of the impermanence of reality will lead to the eradication of attachment to the idea of self. Suffering in the absolute sense is the arising and falling away of each moment of life. This difference between concept and reality is completely missing in GCSE Buddhism specifications. As such, the teaching of the Four Noble Truths is meaningless. We now have a new meaning of the word spirituality which can be used in religious education sessions. We go wrong because we have misconceptions about reality itself. We suffer and cause others to suffer because we take the concept for reality. We also now have a challenge to humanism which could be used in citizenship or religious education classes. The humanist will go wrong sooner or later. They make the assumption that there is an abiding self or ego that can make decisions as to right or wrong. In reality, each moment is conditioned and the humanist unknowingly accumulates the condition for going wrong. The purpose of mindfulness is to study reality in order to understand its characteristics as it is. The whole purpose of mindfulness is to understand. To be a Buddhist is to be confident that sound, tastes, sights, that this moment can be understood. To worship the Buddha is to develop this understanding. When there is mindfulness, a reality appears clearer than before, its characteristic is apparent and understanding can grow. This understanding will eliminate attachment to the idea of self and eventually all attachment. This understanding is called insight meditation in Pali, vipassana. It is not intellectual understanding, but the direct understanding of a characteristic of reality. Even before the Buddha's time, there were people who saw the disadvantages of sense impressions and the clinging to them. They developed tranquil meditation, secular. Tranquil meditation, in Pali, samatha, and insight meditation in Pali, vipassana have each a different aim and a different way of development. In tranquil meditation, one develops calm by concentrating on a meditation subject in order to be temporarily free from sense impressions and the attachment which is bound up with them. For example, when we have mental states rooted in detachment such as kindness, generosity, compassion. There is calmness at such moments, but for a very short length of time. By thinking about kindness over and over again, it can condition more moments of calm. The development of calm is not necessary for the development of insight, but can go along with it. Reworded from The Buddha's Path by Nina Van Gorkum. Photo by Stuck in Customs. Attachment is a condition for aversion. This can be towards ideas as well as sense objects. The examples below could be explored in religious education, PSHE and citizenship lessons. The cat jumps in front of the television when Strictly Come Dancing, or our favorite program, is on. The Tunbridge Wells resident, Upmarket Town, is devastated when Poundland, Downmarket Shop, comes to the city centre. The wife gets agitated when coffee is poured into a tea mug. The devastated teenager whose smartphone has run out of battery. The unhappy mother who cannot cross the road with her baby due to traffic queuing for a superstar. Attachment causes us to go wrong. Attachment is never satisfied. We always want something else or somebody else. If you're a religious education teacher, you could try this lovely idea from Teachers TV, authored by Susie Paskins. Get your 11-year-old pupils to color in a picture of a mandala for half an hour, then get the best behaved pupil to come forward and explain their picture to the rest of the class. Then tell this person to rip it up and put it in the bin. Watch as he bursts into tears. Then watch the rest of the class burst into tears. After you have got the sack, you can reflect that your attachment to your mortgage, job, pleasant things conditions your aversion. Photo by Dancing Tarot. Casting aside the lovely form, this does not mean that we throw Margot Robbie out of the window. Attachment is cast aside by understanding the true nature of what it is we are attached to. Realities are impermanent and only last a split second. This understanding will condition detachment. Secular mindfulness cannot achieve this as it misses the real. Photo by Recall. Secular mindfulness has come into our schools and universities, largely unchallenged. Yet in these practices, there is no evidence that the difference between concept and reality is understood, neither is there the understanding of the application of conditionality to practice. The mechanism by which mindfulness arises is therefore lost. The mechanism becomes the idea of the self who can cause mindfulness to arise. This is going in the opposite direction to the purpose of mindfulness, which is detachment from the idea of self, and so it merely becomes another object of attachment. It is harmful because it misleads into thinking that it is being developed, and it makes it harder to develop correctly. It blocks the understanding of the world by taking itself to be the right path. Attachment to the objects around us and to the idea of self will accumulate, with the inevitable consequence of suffering for the practitioner. Photo by Webb Hampstead. Secular mindfulness is fake mindfulness. It misses the real. It is merely a subset of the wrong practice of mindfulness. Pupils and students who practice it will fall into the flame of the lamp sooner or later. They hasten up and past, but miss the real. A bondage ever new they cause to grow. Just as the flutters fall into the lamp, so some are bent on what they see and hear. The Buddha. Photo by Wright Adam. Thank you for listening to this presentation. The link below will take you to the original haiku presentation, references and the paper. My name is Lisa and my sound is as real as the author's sound, Alan Weller. However, Alan is not real. Just like me.